Today's guest is Buck Rasmussen, motivational speaker and sales manager. All right, Buck, thank you for coming on the show.
Tats, thanks for having me. I've listened to so many of these podcasts and I've watched a couple of them too. And so it's kind of surreal to be a guest on here.
Hey, thanks for coming on. I love your sports background, your building materials, in and around roofing and other things background. I mean, I'm interested to hearing about your background.
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's been a lot of twists and turns. I played in the NFL, but that barely tells any of the story. I came from a really small town and very late bloomer, always hurt, just kind of obstacle after obstacle
Mm. Hey,
on my
tell
way
me
to
about
making.
late bloomer, because not late bloomer. Got to experience the pro ranks. Don't always go together. So tell me about that.
Well, that's right. But I guess I should say I'm kind of a tall guy. I'm 6'5",
Yeah.
but I come from a family of really tall guys. So,
But
well,
what's really tall? From your 6'5",
I
what's
have a
really,
brother that's 7'2".
wow.
So we have a lot of tall, lanky people in the family, none of whom played, high level football. I have some brothers that played, great football players and everything, but not at that level. So I was kind of blazing a trail there, and nobody looked exactly like me. Let's put it that way. And
Yeah,
so I was a late bloomer. I was tall, skinny, and weak, but I always had this goal of playing in the NFL. And I
yeah.
set it when I was 5 years old. And
Woo.
so I just worked at it and worked at it. And, I became like a junior in high school. And I'm thinking, boy, I'm not even close. But I just kept working. And eventually I kind of got noticed by some college scouts.
Yeah,
And I signed to play with Nebraska. And this was the late 90s. Nebraska was really good.
yeah,
And it kind of all fell apart through some academic issues that I had, let's put it that way.
sure.
And so I ended up at a junior college. But before training camp even started, I got in a head on collision with a truck, so I couldn't even play football that year.
Wow.
Yeah, so I went to a community college, didn't play football. Long, windy road, but I ended up playing at a Division II school here in Omaha, Nebraska. They're called University of Nebraska Omaha. And started right away, had a bunch of success my freshman year, but I blew my knee out. I dislocated my kneecap. So it's the beginning, Tats, of a story of, man, I'm ascending, and a roadblock gets put up.
Yeah. I mean, what was
And
your belief system as you were up and then sort of started to crash down? Like how confident, what was your demeanor through that whole thing?
when I was that young, it was just kind of second nature to grind because um, we just didn't have much growing up. So everything was kind of hard. So I was just used to kind of grinding.
Hmm. Hmm.
But when you start to stack a couple of those obstacles in a row, the academic thing, then the car accident, then the dislocating the kneecap, it kind of starts to beat you down. But I still had that goal. I wanted to play in the NFL. And so I worked my way back up. And I get to my senior year. I'm a preseason All American in Sports Illustrated, um, big and strong and fast. I'm on the map. Scouts were kind of starting to take notice. And the second week of that season in practice, I dislocated my kneecap again. And that was devastating. That was a life altering event that really kind of set me on the course to where I am right now, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Before I just ask a little bit clarification on the football stuff. I mean, when you were 5, was it one thing that you saw that just spurred on, or did you have people in and around you, or friends, or whatever, that were achieving that? Like at 5, I always wonder, how do you remember that goal coming to you?
Do you remember Walter Payton? The Chicago Bears in the mid 80s were like the team. You know what I mean? And my brothers were playing football. They're older than me. And so I watched them, but I also watched college and NFL all the time. And Walter Payton was just like my absolute hero. Still to this day, he is. And so I just kind of fell in love with it at that time. I had no personal model for it. I had nobody from my hometown that had done anything like that. I come from a town of 1,800 people. And I I guess I don't know. Maybe I was crazy, Tats. I don't know. I kind of
All
thought I
right.
could
So,
do it, and I set about trying to do it.
yeah. So you ended up on a NFL team. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I need to go back a little bit. So when I blew my knee out, I had to take a medical red shirt. So I had to take that whole senior year off. Was extremely painful mentally and physically. I had to get my knee reconstructed for the second time in 4 years. So I I I was in a spot where I had to make a decision whether or not I was going to whether or not I was going to do it. It wasn't I couldn't be halfway in or halfway out, and I just made a decision that I was going to do that no matter what it took. And I had to claw my senior year. I ended up starting out very slow my senior year, but kind of grinded through it. And as the season went on, I just got a little bit better and a little bit better, gained a little bit more confidence with each game. And at the end of it, I was invited to play in an all-star game, and it was with Division 1 guys. And it was a brand new all-star game. So most people I had never heard of it. It was outside of Las Vegas. Most people had never heard of it. But there was one guy that was playing in the game that made it worthwhile to go to, our quarterback, a guy named Tony Romo. Because he was going to be there, all the NFL scouts were going to be there. And I was kind of an afterthought in that game. I was going to be like a backup to the backups because I came from a Division 2 school. Um, but I practiced really well all during the week. So I ended up getting to play, and I was named defensive MVP of that game. Lucky for me, all those scouts were there. They were watching Tony Romo, and it kind of put me on the back on the map after blowing my knee out the second time. And one of the teams that was there was the New England Patriots.
Mm.
So I never talked to them. I really had no idea they were looking at me. But on draft day, well, Sunday of the draft, I got 30 offers from NFL teams. I wasn't drafted, but I was an undrafted free agent, like a priority free agent. And so I was offered a contract by pretty much every team. So I just had to make a decision, and my agent decided on the Patriots because they had a couple guys who were about to retire, and he thought I could maybe beat out one of those guys and get the spot. And so that's how I ended up in the Patriots. Now this was 2003. Remember, in 2001 they had won the Super Bowl. Tom Brady was there, and a lot of the stud defense players were there. And needless to say, when I got there, I was completely overwhelmed with. You want to talk about surreal? The first person I met when I walked in the facility was Tom Brady, and it was as if it was a dream. I remember walking down a hallway in Gillette Stadium facilities, and I look up, and Tom Brady's there, walking towards me, and I thought, "Oh my god!" I'm like freaking out. "Oh my god, that's Tom Brady!" And I'm just going to keep my head down and keep walking, but he stops me and he introduces himself. "Hi, I'm Tom Brady." And I said, "Well, yeah, I know you're Tom Brady." And he just talked to me for like 10 minutes and asked me where I was from, what position, gave me his phone number, asked if he could help with anything, all of
Wow.
that stuff, and made me feel at home right away. So that was kind of my baptism into the New England Patriots. Of course, Bill Belichick wasn't quite as friendly, but anyway, that's how I ended up with the New England Patriots.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so you played sports for a while. I'm sure there's other lessons we can talk about, but how did you end up in the sort of the building materials, plumbing, roofing side of things?
Yeah, when I got done playing football, I sold real estate for 5 years. I was on a team with my brother. We were year in and year out in the Omaha market. We were top five real estate team. We kicked a lot of butt, but after 5 years of working 14-hour days, during the week and 12-hour days every weekend, I was kind of burnt out with that, and I was starting a family. So I wanted to keep in sales. And my only stipulation, I didn't know what kind of sales I wanted to do, but I wanted to work for a very reputable company. That was like my only stipulation because I was kind of burnt out on asking friends and family for business and banging on doors and gaining business. I just wanted to focus on the sales part of it. And coincidentally, Kohler was hiring, and they reached out, and I think there were 50 people that interviewed for that job. It was kind of a tight job market back then in 2009, 2010 kind of era. And I got the job and fell in love with that company immediately. So
Yeah,
I worked at Kohler for a couple of years, and then Owens Corning recruited me away, and that's how I got into the roofing industry.
got it, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, since then you kind of stuck around. What made you stick around in the roofing?
There's a saying, you're in the roofing industry. There's a saying that once you get in, you can never get out. Is that true where you are?
Yeah, it is. I hear that a lot.
I just fell in love with it right away. First of all, it can be a very lucrative industry, but also just the people. There's a lot of similarities in the roofing industry, in particular in sales to sports. It's competitive. There's a lot of ups and downs, but you can kind of make yourself into who you want to be, which is a parallel to my sports career. And so I just fell in love with that part of it. And then it's just a super fun business.
Mhm.
You get to meet a lot of people. You get to go on trips if you do well. Um, it's just extremely rewarding.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, for what you learned in sports, what sort of things are sort of directly applicable in terms of like applying to what you're currently doing now?
The biggest thing is, well, so what I'm really doing now, I wear two hats. So my day job is I work for Da Vinci Roofscapes. So we're a manufacturer of high end shake and slate composite materials, and love that job. Been doing it for about a year. But my nights and weekends and all of that job is motivational speaking, and I've been doing that really on and off since I got done with football in 2005. I would go speak just kind of at request to different sports teams. Um, but after a series of very challenging life events for me, in 2022, I decided to focus on that with the intensity that I had focused on sports in the past. And if you don't mind, I can kind of give you the background of why.
Yes, yes. What changed?
So, in I kind of touched on working for Kohler and then getting into Owens Corning. In 2012, I was working for Owens Corning. I'd been working there for about a year, had a lot of success. I was rookie of the year there. Um, I got invited to be put in their sales leadership program. So I was kind of riding really high. Just bought a new house, married with a daughter, just awesome. Everything was going as well as it possibly could have been going in my life. And then in August of that year, my 4-year old daughter got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And within 6 weeks, my wife found out she was pregnant and had cancer on the same day.
Mm.
It was as you can imagine, I mean, just a devastating 6-week period for us that, uh, how could I put it? It rocked our world, I think is the best way to put it. And it set off a series of events that we didn't know at the time, um, was going to last for years. I mean, my wife beat cancer within 2 or 3 years, but there's just been long term repercussions from that. Type 1 diabetes, there's no cure for that disease yet. The technology is vastly improved, but it's a 24/7, 365 care disease, especially as the parent of a youngster. And so it's exhausting mentally and physically and emotionally. And I was incredibly burnt out as a caregiver. My heart goes out to caregivers of any kind. Um, and so there were some low points. And eventually we were able to kind of crawl our way out of that and find some semblance of normalcy. But it took, I mean, at Tats, I'm not kidding, it took 6, 7, 8 years to get to that point. And what I eventually learned was all of the things that I used in football, and I'm also a wrestler too. I wrestled my whole life. Um, kind of applied when you're trying to reach a big goal in your life. You it can be very overwhelming because you're looking at this big picture, and I think the mistake a lot of people make, and I made at that time, was there's no way I can handle all this. I've been trying to handle being the caregiver, being the breadwinner, being the shoulder to cry on, um, keeping a brave face. Been trying to do that for years, and I'm about to get kind of beat down. It reminded me of overcoming that second knee dislocation, my senior year in college. The big picture was way too much at that time. The only way I could do it was focus on today. What can I control today based on my ultimate goal? My ultimate goal at that time was having a happy family, healthy family, bright future. I can't look at this whole overwhelming big picture. I just have to focus on today. Um, Health for my kids, health for my wife, being positive, being a role model, doing what I can at work, but not too much, all of those kind of things. And I started to draw a lot of similarities between the football stuff and my goals with that, and my family stuff and my goals for getting them back on track. And eventually in 2022, I realized one, I have a ton of stories to tell. The story's not enough though. If you can get other people to relate it to their story, because as you know, I mean, everybody's battling whatever they're battling. If I can get people to understand that regardless of what it is, you can overcome it. If it's a goal or if it's a challenge, it's kind of the same thing. Um, you've got to figure out what you want, big picture. What do you want out of your life? People are very nonchalant about that. It's my pet peeve. What do you want out of your life? Then narrow that down to one actionable goal, write that goal down, and then kind of keep funneling everything down. I've got the big picture of what I want my life to look like in 1 year or 5 years or 10 years. I've got a goal that I can work on, then an inventory list of the things that I can control today that will get me one step closer to that, then a standard that I live no matter what the circumstances are in my life. I live that standard every day. I get better today, and then I reset tomorrow. So I realized these universal truths, whether I was 22 years old in football or I was 35 years old battling, helping my family in the battle for their lives. And now in the building materials industry, I think there's a gap. We have a lot of people that want to grow. They go to name the conference. You've probably been to all of them, and I'm sure you know all of them. Maybe you run some of them. I don't know. Um, they go to get product training. They get sales training. They get insurance training. They get all that training, but I do think there's a gap in terms of motivation. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that stuff is always beneficial, right? Personal development. I think, especially the roofing industry, I've seen a lot of strides on business skills, but there's just a lot more than that, right?
Yeah,
So I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve.
I think so. So I'm just kind of at the tip of the iceberg with it.
So this is kind of for you managing and overcoming some of your family stuff. Is it a discovering a purpose? Is it partially helping you reinforce your sort of mental attitude towards this? What is this doing for you? What's the big picture?
Well, what I learned, I think, is one, the stories that I have to tell, but the big picture is this. I'm a compassionate person. I'm an empathetic person. And I kind of told you my philosophy on overcoming adversity and reaching your goals, starting from the big picture, funneling it down, setting the standard, having actionable things. That's teachable. That's learnable. Um, I feel like I can be a vessel for it. But even with all that, I couldn't have done any of that stuff myself. I had so many mentors. I had so many coaches. I had so many family members. The friends that I met in the building materials industry. I mean, the shoulders that I cried on. Sometimes literally when we were going through hell. Um, I owe it. I mean, I really owe it to the industry. And when I can speak to a group, or I can put out some content on LinkedIn, or I can do a podcast, and somebody reaches out and says, "Man, that had an impact on me." I mean, there's nothing better than that. I'm obsessed with that. I want to make an impact on people. Um, it's just everything. I mean, it's my passion.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. I mean, do you still play any sports?
You know, it's funny, Tats. So tonight, my daughters play volleyball. Tonight, it's parents versus players volleyball practice. And my wife's like, "You're going, right?" And I said, "Well, I have a work dinner." She's like, "Well, what do you want me to do? You want me to play?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I was kind of expecting you to." She said, "No, you are." I'm like, "I get hurt sleeping, so I don't know if I'm the best person to do that." I tell
Especially
you
the
what,
parents versus the kids one. That's when the injuries happen.
yeah, because they're not kids; they're 16-year-olds. They play nationally. You know, they're good.
Yeah.
I've had I've had 3 knee reconstructions, both shoulders reconstructed, um, dislocated my elbow, had my back fused. I don't play many sports. I work out a lot though.
Yeah, I mean, in profile it says helping athletes realize who they want to be. So obviously, you're helping people within the building materials. It sounds like you're helping athletes or people that are athletic minded. Is that as well?
Well, this whole thing started when I started it in earnest. I was talking to high school and college football teams and wrestling teams and others, you know, by request. But that was kind of the focus. I'm still doing that because I just have a big network with that.
Yeah,
Um, only within the last 6 to 12 months have I decided to really focus on the building materials industry because, like I said, there's just these universal truths. I mean,
sure.
the roofing in particular, it's competitive. Any multi-billion dollar industry is competitive. And if you want to win consistently, that's another point I want to touch on, by the way, Tabs. In our industry, I don't want to say it's easy to win occasionally, but I've seen a lot of people that aren't great win when it storms or when they're in new construction and the interest rates are really low. When the tide is high for them, they win. And that's awesome. I've been a beneficiary of that. And I'm sure you probably have too. But changes are coming. It's inevitable. It's like the injury that I got in football or the multiple. You can be really riding high one day and things can change. I think where I can be a benefit is to get people to understand that your stand, first of all, complacency is human nature, ego is human nature. When a hailstorm comes through your city and damages 100,000 homes, we're all going to win. And that's great. It's not always going to be like that. And the people that are consistently successful don't get too high with the highs or too low with the lows. They have a standard that they live. And it's the same with sports teams. The New England Patriots weren't that successful because Belichick let them get full of themselves. I'll promise you that. I mean, and you go down the list of coaches, the ones that are consistently successful, first of all, they give really boring press conferences, right? Because they say the same thing, the standard, the program, all those same things.
Yeah,
Those things are applicable to our industry.
yeah,
I think I can help.
sure. I know read Phil Jackson's book, and I guess he said something along the lines of basically, how do you make the mundane exciting? Like, repackage it, but reinforcing it. But it's just, I guess you can just love it, right? Love the fundamentals. Or as a coach, you have to find different ways to get people continually engaged about the fundamentals.
I think it takes some creativity. Every once in a while, you have the freak, right? You have Tom Brady or Michael Jordan. I read that book, by the way, too. I love that book. Um, you're probably obsessed with autobiographies like I am.
I mean, I like to, see different people's point of view and ideas. It's fun, especially people that have accomplished, some things. They're extremely focused, right? They take whatever they want to do to the furthest level. So
Yeah,
I'm always curious about what and how their mind works.
I am too. I want to learn from it.
Yeah.
You know,
So
I want to learn
yeah,
something.
you gave us that, very good, sort of face-to-face Tom Brady story, Belichick. I mean, what's an example of something you just don't see that maybe hasn't been talked too much about in the media about, that team being an insider. Because what has me really curious, and I don't know much about football, is Belichick is now coaching a college team. How's that going to go?
These kids are so showered with affection and money. He's not going to be affectionate to those kids. So I think he hired someone else to be affectionate to those kids. It's well, hey, maybe he can change Tats, but it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. I don't know. Can I tell you another quick story?
Sure, absolutely.
My second year, I'm on the practice squad. I'm a low man on the totem pole. And there's a lot of sayings within New England, but one of them is the more you can do, meaning the more ways that you can provide value to the team, the better chance you have to stick around, to make money, to be successful. So I was looking to do anything I could. I was a defensive lineman. We had multiple people on the offensive line get hurt. Belichick approached me at breakfast one day and he said, "Hey, so and so's hurt. Would you mind playing offensive line at practice?" And I said, "Sure, coach, anything I could do." And so the first day, or that day, I hadn't played offensive line since I was a senior in high school in Tacoma, Nebraska. I line up against a guy named Richard Seymour, the biggest stud I ever saw in football. He absolutely trucks me. I mean, I'm just flat on my back. And I'm like, whoa. And I jump up and I'm like, okay, next play, I just have to do better. And as the practice went on, I'm like, I just got to get a little bit better. The next day, we're watching film. Every morning, you watch film of the previous practice, and Bill spends about 10 minutes laying into everybody. But this day, he was on even more of a rampage than ever. And I'm just it's in an auditorium. I'm in my chair and I'm just thinking, he's going through and he's lighting people up and with the remote control. And I'm just thinking, my play is about to come up. That first play where I got trucked. And I'm like, I think they'll cut me some slack because I haven't played offensive line since whenever, the 90s, basically. And he did not cut me any slack. He likes to cuss and he likes the F word a lot. And he says, "Rasmussen, what the bleep is this? You couldn't play junior high school football. You don't belong on the team." That whole thing. I had smoke coming out of my ears. I was so mad. I'm like, I'm just trying to help the team. I mean, I was shaking mad until a couple minutes later, he's going through the film. Brady fumbles the snap. And Bill rewinds it and plays it again, rewinds it and plays it again. He must have played it 5 times. And he goes, "Brady, what the bleep is this? You couldn't play for the Foxborough High School football team, let alone in the NFL," and just lays into him. And he is kind of known for that, but it made me laugh. It made a lot of people laugh, actually. I don't know if he was trying to make us laugh, but I guess what I'm saying is, whether you're the low guy on the totem pole or you're Tom Brady or you're one of the coaches, the standard is the standard.